We're speaking to the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, TUTA, President Martin Lumpkin. A pleasant good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Mikey. Good evening to your listeners, and good evening to Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Always on email.
Stakeholders in the education sector have called for an alternative to the secondary entrance assessment exam, what we know as C, which has evolved from the common entrance and what have you. Um, we've heard so much talk about this, and you yourself said it. We've heard so much talk in the past about it. Where listen, this C exam, how best can it change? How best can it, help these young students? I mean, when you look at it, parents are always concerned. Students seem to be under stress. What say you? And why is it important we do find an alternative?
Firstly, Mikey, the SEA examination, the Common Entrance examination, are both placement examinations. And we would have inherited this from our past. And as you know, there's history in terms of going way back where there were not sufficient secondary schools placings for the number of primary school students. And so the government of the day would have continued to have this placement examination. In this day and age, we believe that there are sufficient places, in the secondary schools. And even quite recently, the Ministry of Education would have paid for places at some of the private schools. And so this placement examination that we are utilizing, and that is from our colonial days, is still being applied. There, and TTUTA has been calling on successive ministers and ministries of education and government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. It's high time we find a more efficient, a more friendly way in order to have our primary school students transition from the primary to the secondary school. There was a former Minister of Education who spoke about a seamless education system from ECCE all the way to tertiary. And we seem to have veered away from that somewhat, because this examination, it fulfills in certain quarters, it fulfills a certain level of authority, a certain level of persons having hold in the education system. And those persons who are into the education system will always speak about this high-stake examination. You have 11, 12, 13-year-old children having to go through this sort of stress. Actually, the preparation begins at standard 3, and you are having parents sending their children to lessons from standard 3. And now the Ministry of Education has reintroduced what we had previously called national tests, and they call it the Trinidad and Tobago Learning Assessment examination. So standard 1s and 3s are assessed on English language, maths, and creative writing, and placing our students with so much of stress and emphasis on examination, standardized tests, summative examination instead of formative. And we are having children who are not enjoying school life as they should. Your school days are supposed to be the happiest days of your life. And it's where you learn not only based on the curriculum, but you learn interaction, interpersonal skills, and other areas, sports, other performing arts, etc., etc. But we seem to have an education system where we are only focused on certification, we are only focused on examination, and we are not focusing on the well-being of the child.
And you believe that we have paid a price for that as a society and by extension as a country? Because you said that the fact that statistics at the C examination is not the best metric to determine what we would like to see is success or failure. And I think that's a very strong point. If you could please expand on that first.
So we have this examination at the end of a child's supposedly schooling at the primary level, the standardized test. And all students, no matter which school you attend, so it's in either end of the country from Tobago to Trinidad. So your cultural background, your experiences, etc., are different depending on your geographical location, depending on the influence of of different cultures. Yet still, all of the students are subjected to this one examination and are then placed and judged by these examinations. Is it really a metric that can determine if our education system is producing the best citizens? Are we really educating our children to be contributing positively to our nation? Is it really showing what the education system needs to do to improve? And are we really building a nation? Are we looking at national development when it comes to these areas? Now, there are certain fundamental and basic principles and basic lessons that are supposed to be taught. We are supposed to be producing functionally literate children and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. If we look at the SEA results, really, you look at those who perform over 90%, those in between over 50%, and then those below 30%. What does that say to our nation? What does that say as an education system? Is it that we are really, really providing for the individual? And, that metric should not be done only at the end of the schooling term, but should be a cumulative assessment. And the evaluation should also be assessment of education and assessment for education, whereby you utilize what is not working and you try to improve it in terms of the curriculum, in terms of delivery, and in terms of support and resources.
Well, let me ask you this. Going back to what you said, this whole colonial, basically an archaic sort of way of looking at it, this exam. Is it really preparing our students to be globally competitive? I mean, to compete on that global market? I mean, so much has changed. And the fact of the matter is that there are some hurdles that are there that one would have to bring into this equation, such as economics, personal economics. I was privileged that when the term was over, I was able to get my books for the next term, perhaps the next day or the day after. I was privileged. I mean, I had grandparents that were able to do that. So I had a sort of a start run in over the holidays to be able to prepare, to go through the curriculum, go through the books, get ready for the start of a school term. Not many students, of course, had that privilege as well. And in looking at that, does the students really grasp the essence of what is being taught?
And you made a very valid point in terms of economics, and it has been shown that the student or the child that has the support of the parents, some economically and others by way of having the attention and the time towards it. But a lot of times the parents who can afford will send their child for extra lessons, will have the technology at their disposal, which can assist them as well to and we have students whose parents cannot afford, they are struggling. So it works in both spectrum, and you will get the odd or the instances where it's not the commonplace. But you have brought up a valid point, and also support, because if your parents, and I have known of parents who were not educated as in the true sense we use it, and it's not really the true sense, who don't have that certification, they left school at primary level,
Right.
but they ensured that their children, because they understood the worth of an education, they would ensure that their child would do the homework, do the revision, and sometimes the parent can't even read themselves, but they will tell you, bring the book, let me see. And there's that support, and the child feels that the parent is supporting but also checking up on them. So there are a number of factors as well too. And as you said, when we look at our education system, we are failing quite a bit of our students. We are not giving the type of support. So roughly 18 to 19,000 standard 5 children write SE every year. And if we look and we follow going through the secondary school, how many students really write CSEC? How many write KEEP after that? So there is that diminishing numbers. What happens to those children in between?
I agree with you. There you go, because statistics and figures are thrown at us. And at the end of the day, when you look at it, how many of these students are really going about accomplishing anything? I mean, they seem to be stuck in a cycle. And if it's not, God forbid, they end up in some cycle of crime or whatever the case may be, as far as dropping out or going no further, then we as a society will have to pay the price for that, because we have to find some way to accommodate these young people who will, of course, become grown adults and will try to carve out their own space within our economy and our functioning society. So, do we not pay a price for this as we go on, until we realize that we must get rid of this system that is not working? And in doing so, how then do we start? Do we phase it out, or do we just rip it off like a bad band-aid?
Well, the point you made in terms of paying a price, I believe that we are seeing it at this point in time. The number of criminals and crime that are perpetrated on the nation, and even we have children who are more attracted to the gang warfare, the drug trade, etc., instead of staying in school and trying to learn something that will take them forward. So we are seeing that, and there are other factors. I mean, let's not be naive in terms of it's not only the education system, but in terms of the family, the community, and so forth and so on. But we really have to be honest with ourselves, and we really have to say, is this system the best for Trinidad and Tobago? Is it the best in producing a nation which will be less dependent on the energy sector as we are seeing right now, but can be more in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of the agriculture sector, and so on. Not everyone can be doctors, lawyers, etc., teachers, and so on.
And I think that's the point that we have to drive home. We have to make these serious assessments, real assessments, and say, listen, guide them through a system that would be a lot more accommodating and compatible to what they can deliver. So each one can become a productive part of our society. But unfortunately, that is not what we're seeing. And I really and truly hope in the near future that we will no longer be having these discussions, while many of our students are not only falling through the cracks, but are frustrated and don't have the ability to carry on as far as their education. I really hope that this brings us. Closing comments, go right ahead.
So I can recall a very good friend of mine saying this: education is too important to have a politician drive the policy. And that has been the problem over the years. We have politicians who are making policy decisions for the education system, and their best interest may not be the best interest of the education system, but maybe the best interest of their political party or even their political aspirations. And when we allow politics to mix in, especially in the education system, then to me that's a bad recipe. Unless we get a politician who is willing to, as they say, bell the cat, bell the cow, or
Bell the cat, yeah.
you know, yeah. If they're willing to do that and not think about their political future, but do what is right, I think we will find a way. If that person is there, we will find a way to improve the education system. But we must not give up hope.
No, we
because
can't.
Too much is at stake.
We don't have that luxury. Thank you so much, Martin Lumpkin. It's always a pleasure having you on.
It's always an honor.
Thank
Mike.
you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.